Welcome to the Strangeology Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Foran. From cryptozoology, ufology, and the paranormal, to legends, forbidden history, and more. Listen in and explore the world of the weird and unexplained. Join me as I look into strange and fascinating tales and unearth the truths and theories behind some of the world's greatest mysteries. Be sure to head on over to our HQ, Strangeology.com, where you can check out our blog, episodes archive, gift shop, and so much more. Now sit back, relax, and join me as we get weird. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I hope everyone's summer is off to a great start. My allergies are kicking in big time from all the pollen outside, so if my voice sounds a little scratchy, that's why. Things have been pretty busy here over at Strangeology HQ. I've got a lot of prep work to do for the first event I'm vending at this year, which is the Cryptid Bash, hosted by the Moth Boys down in Morgantown, West Virginia on August 7th. So I've got a lot of work to do in the next 6 weeks or so to get my table ready and to get some merch ordered for that. So it's going to be a great time. Definitely check it out if you're in that area this summer. There's going to be a lot of vendors like Conjure Just Designs, the American Snallygaster Museum, as well as the Manic Pixie Dream Ghouls, Small Town Monsters, and a lot more. You can find all the details on the Facebook events page. So please check that out, and I hope to see some of you there. If you haven't visited my shop in a while, I've got a few new designs which people are digging, and more on the way, so definitely keep an eye out for that, as well as some upcoming giveaways, and I'll probably throw a sale or two in at some point in the future if you want to save a couple bucks and also want to support the show. All right, without further ado, for today's episode, we're going to do another interview. I knocked out a bunch of these all at once just to kind of get ahead of myself for for all the content and also prepping for different shows later this year. So I hope you're liking them all so far. I'm definitely liking this format, but I will be getting back to some more research-oriented episodes soon. Maybe even for the next one after this. We'll see. So my guest today is Easton Hawk, who is an illustrator based out of Indiana. And you may have seen some of his B-movie inspired cryptid posters like the Mothman, Flatwoods Monster, Loveland Frogman designs. They're super cool. He's an incredibly talented individual. And we had a great conversation talking about all things Fortean and a lot more. So why don't we just jump into it? I hope you guys dig it. All right. Welcome back to the Strangeology Podcast. For today's show, I have the privilege of speaking with Easton Hawk. We're going to get into some really awesome topics tonight, and I think you're all going to like it. So, quick introduction. Easton Hawk is an illustrator based out of Indiana who is very much influenced by the world of the strange and unexplained, all things that we love here on the Strangeology Podcast. And he's been a long-time enthusiast of cryptids and creatures, urban legends, high strangeness, the unknown, and is also a big fan of horror and science fiction. So how'd I do there, Easton? Anything you'd like to add?
No, that's pretty accurate.
Right on. So cool. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show tonight again.
Absolutely.
It's great to have you. I love your art. And, the first time I saw your poster was just like blown away. So, how long have you been illustrating and like what got you into art?
Illustrating like as a side gig I've been doing for the last probably 6 years or so. I'm 26. I went to school for illustration and art education. I completed 2 years. I went to the Art Academy of Cincinnati, and I went for 2 years and going from a moderately sized city in Indiana called Kokomo to Cincinnati was a huge culture shock. And I loved it, but at the same time, it overwhelmed me. And I have little bouts of social anxiety and, you know, manic episodes and stuff like that, which I've, taken care of like an adult and got medicated and whatnot. But
Sure,
um,
sure.
so I dropped out 2 years in, and then I started just doing it as a side thing, along with my day jobs and whatnot. So I'm also in the music scene, which I know we'll get into eventually. But so it's
Yes.
been a lot of album art, lots of band T-shirt stuff, lots of stuff like that. And then because of the pandemic, I finally had time to like slow down and breathe and get all this cryptid stuff that I've been sitting on for a long, long time going. But I've been drawing, um, as a kid, pretty much as long as I can remember. It's actually really funny. I refused to like clean up my toys in my room when I was a child. And my parents gave me like a 3 strike rule type thing when I got old enough that I should have childhood responsibilities.
Sure.
So strike three came and they said, we're taking all this stuff that you refused to clean up, and they just gave me a drawing pad, and
There you go.
so that was entertainment, and that was my lifeblood for from then on for a few years until I finally got my stuff back.
There you go. Cool.
So they strong armed me into it.
Right on. Yeah, like I was saying, I remember when I first saw the Mothman poster, I was so blown away with just like how much detail was put into it. And I love the look of old B movie posters and like that
Absolutely.
whole aesthetic.
Hmm.
And then like the subsequent ones you've done for like the Flatwoods Monster and the Loveland Frogman are just like they're so on point. It's it's really
Thank you.
awesome. And like beyond being influenced by weird and unexplained subject matter, is there a particular artist or style that you've always looked for inspiration?
Definitely Bernie Wrightson, who was a huge. He did like the Creep Show mock-up comic for the Stephen King and George A. Romero movie.
Yeah.
So Bernie Wrightson's just thick, nasty ink work is really what like caught my eye and started pointing me in that direction of I want to do art that's really heavily line art oriented, and then
Hmm.
really splashy, flashy color or as an afterthought pretty much, but still enough to keep you interested in everything. But it's definitely line work and black and white is what really pulled me into that line of work.
That's
So Bernie
awesome.
Wrightson, more modern people be like the Art of Skinner, Alex Pardee, Aaron Crawford at Cavity Colors, people like that.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I when I was in college, I took some like art history courses, but
Mm-hmm.
I was I wasn't the most punctual student, so I'd usually show up to art history class
Yep.
half asleep, and then I just like kind of nap on the table, and the professor didn't really care. I think he called on me like once or twice to
That's
kind of wake me up, see if I was paying
art.
attention.
I feel
So
like art history professors pretty much understand what their class is going to be used for, and it's pretty much an impromptu study hall or sleeping period. But
right,
I
yeah,
kind of had
yeah.
a Jay Zumeta was my art history professor in Cincinnati, and I feel like he knew what we were there for. It was to relax and not learn anything,
Right.
except for the art history majors, which that school did away with.
Right. Yep. That sounds about par for the course there. What's what's been the favorite, like your favorite illustration you've done so far, and what cryptids or creatures are you hoping to tackle in the future?
I want to say my favorite is probably the Flatwoods one, just because I got to take a lot more liberties with it. And I've never played the Fallout 76 game, but I know that the West Virginia cryptids were added into it. So uh, the last couple years I went to Mothman, they had a vault vault location. I don't know what to call it. So I got like wind of Mothman design and the Flatwoods monster design, and I guess there's Grafton monster too.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of it being more of like a flesh and blood thing in a almost like a mech suit of some sort. So I kind of ran with that. So I'd say Flatwoods was definitely the most fun to come up with and to, you know, go from the thumbnail process to drawing this thing. But Mothman is definitely the most popular of the things I've put out so far. So it has
Yeah,
a, you know,
Mothman's pretty big.
yep, it's so I appreciate it, and it almost makes me wish that I would have hold off on it because I love drawing Mothman. So I feel like I'm never going to be able to outdo that one. So
Ah,
it's on the back burner forever.
right. Well, never say never.
One and done, pretty much. It's like George
One and done.
Costanza. You go out on a high note. You make one good joke, you got to leave. So
You know, I guess that's probably pretty good advice to live your life by. And
I think I do live my life like that. Never overstay.
Right.
Um, Stuff
Yeah.
coming out. To answer that question, I am concurrently working on 3 posters at the same time because I'm trying to really rev up for Mothman Festival, the Cryptid Bash with the Moth Boys, and Cryptid Con. So I am
Right
working on a Hopkinsville Goblins poster. I'm working on a Snallygaster, and I'm working on a Goosebumps meets Black Eyed Kids poster, which
Oh
I think will be
no.
really cool.
That
Yeah, so
sounds
that's
awesome.
another artist that I absolutely love is Tim Jacobus that did all of R.L. Stein's art. So
Oh,
I've been
that's
wanting to
really
do
cool.
kind of a rip off cryptid switch over crossover type thing. So that's also
Oh
in the works right
man.
now.
Yeah, kicking it old school for sure.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for letting us know like
Yeah.
what's coming down the pipeline. I'm super
So
stoked for that.
it's a little by little type thing because my wife and I just had a baby in February, or sorry, in March, and
Yeah, congrats.
yeah, thank you. So it's lots of being on baby schedule when I'm home
Yep.
after my work schedule. So
Yes. I
lots of
know
that
that
stuff.
life.
I know.
I know.
So I know you're a night owl, and for whatever reason, right now I rise and fall with the sun. So as soon as the sun goes down, I have no motivation, and I just want to sleep. So hopefully, I'll kick that pretty soon, so I can get these done.
Right on, right on. Yep, I know that life for sure.
It's fun. It's a joy.
Yeah. Oh, it's like the best thing in the world, man. It really
Definitely.
is. Like you grow up and you're like, I don't know about kids, and then like one day they're
Yep.
there.
And you're like, wow, I can't remember what it's like without you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's wonderful for sure.
Definitely.
So with your illustrations, like what kind of equipment do you use? We can
Uh, yeah, I try to do a pretty good mix of traditional work and then I use an iPad Pro and I use Procreate like everybody else, and it's phenomenal and it's changed my life. Um, so a lot of the time I do a lot of sketching on paper, just because it's so hard to like get scaling right with Procreate if you're just sketching freehand and going in. So I need just paper and I need 9 by 12 and just pencil. I do a lot of that. Sometimes I'll do inking and I'll scan it in, and then I'll either re-ink it digitally, or I'll just go in and vector trace it and then start uh, the coloring from there. But yeah, it's mostly I'll draw it on paper, I'll scan that in, I'll ink everything out for the bare bones and everything, and then I'll start cranking away at details, and then
nice.
color comes after that, and it's just nonstop little tweaking. And I think most of my pieces I clock in about 20 to 27 hours, something like that.
Wow. Yeah, there's an incredible amount of detail that goes into your work, and it's it's very
I love it,
impressive.
but
It's very
it'll drive you mad. So it's a lot
yeah.
of squeezing out, zooming in, doing more, squeezing out, zooming in, doing more. So it's a lot of that
Sure.
stuff. So it's a little
Yeah.
neurotic at some
Yeah.
point.
I know like my process for like doing my own designs is usually pencil and paper, and then I'll
Mhm.
scan it in, and then uh either use like my mouse to digitize it, or I do have a tablet where
Mhm.
it's not like an on-screen tablet. You have to like look at the computer
Yeah,
screen, and
I did the old
it's
Wacom tablet for a
yeah,
while, and
yep,
going
that's
from
what
that to
I've got.
iPad, it's completely made everything so easy. I can just throw that
Yeah,
thing in my backpack and pick it up wherever I'm at. It's so nice.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I might have to make the jump someday.
I yeah, I know it's a very, it's a privilege to be able to like get that equipment, and I am so like thankful that I took the jump and like just did it, because it really is, it gives back just as much as you put into it.
Nice, that's awesome.
Definitely.
So, Easton, you're from the Midwest, particularly Indiana. Uh, and do you think living in that part of the United States has had any bearing or impact on getting into the Fortean world? Like, I remember there's that old show, Erie, Indiana, and it's just like
Yes.
and then like
Loved Erie,
with
Indiana.
Stranger Things is supposed to be based in a fictional
Right. In
town in
Hawkins,
Indiana, in
Indiana.
Hawkins,
Right.
Indiana. So there's definitely like a weird vibe that at least seems to project from there in fiction, but
Yeah. Um, Surprisingly, I only recently found all of the rich like cryptid lore and everything because of David Weatherly's book. Um, I forget what it's called now. Monsters at the Crossroads, something like that, where
okay,
he's doing his series on all 50 states. And
nice.
I only recently, picked that up and read that, and I had no idea that Indiana was like so rich with cryptids and Fortiana and all that stuff. I mean, by the name of Indiana, it's Indian, so there's a lot of that like borderline racist,
Mm,
Indian appropriation or Native American appropriation type stuff. So grew up with a lot
right.
of that. My grandfather on my mom's side is actually from West Virginia, so I was
Okay.
exposed to like Appalachian culture and stuff growing up. And he's actually definitely the one that pushed me into that whole world, because he lived in a house in the middle of nowhere with woods that surrounded it. So of course, while I'm staying the night when I'm like 5 or 6, he has to tell me about Bigfoot and Sasquatch and all that stuff to keep me out of the woods. So
Right.
he
Scare the
definitely
crap out
he
of you.
definitely yeah, he did the number. And I remember very well having a nightmare at his house that there was a big hairy man looking at me through the window while I'm going to sleep. So that definitely is what pushed me into being interested in this kind of stuff. And uh, watching Unsolved Mysteries with my mom, for hours on end. So she also had like a slight interest in it. I definitely went way, way further than she ever did, because whenever I talk about the stuff where she sees my artwork, she's like, it's a little out there. But yeah, Indiana, other than it just being a highly boring place, so the escapism of Fortiana definitely beckoned. Um, I would definitely say it's my grandfather bringing Appalachian culture and lore into my life. That would be
Gotcha.
more of what did it.
Gotcha. It totally makes sense. Someone who lives in
Yeah,
that region and
yeah,
also, you know, knows a lot about the stories and things like that.
definitely.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Um, so my next question would be, and maybe you already answered this, but like, was there a particular moment in your life that made you realize that there was something more to like cryptids and the paranormal um, than, or like a fleeting thought versus like this is a lifestyle?
Yeah. So, like I said, my grandpa really like planted the seed and the idea of there are things that we don't completely understand and we can't prove, but people have been theoretically seeing these things for as long as humans have been what they are. So I would definitely say that it's when I one watched the Mothman prophecies and then read the book the Mothman prophecies
Yeah.
and realized that Mothman is pretty much the least interesting thing of the whole Mothman story. Men in Black really interest me.
Yeah.
Missing Time really interests me. Um, Prophecies, visions, all that stuff really interests me. So I would definitely say it's when I picked up the book, The Mothman Prophecies, and I realized that that whole story is much deeper than just a hairy winged man running around giving everybody pink eye. So I would say that's probably it's probably my freshman year in high school when I picked up the book.
Right on, right on. Yeah, no, that's Mothman Prophecies is definitely like a must-have
Yep,
book
it is
for anybody looking into this kind of thing.
definitely.
Yeah. Now horror and sci-fi, they're both things that I'm into. Though I'm probably a little bit more in like the sci-fi camp. What's your favorite uh which one's your like favorite genre, and then also what are your favorite, like your top like 5 movies for those genres?
Between the two of them, I would probably say that horror is my favorite, just because of uh, the counterculture effect that it has,
Hmm.
and like I don't know, the franchises just run wild. So I love that. My favorite movie of all time is John Carpenter's remake of The Thing, um,
Ah.
and Rob Bottin's visual effect work on that is definitely what like molded my mind into loving wrinkly, oozy, disgusting work and imagery and stuff like that.
Yeah. You
I
you
also
did a piece
love,
for The Thing, right?
yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was one of many. I've got a couple other things coming out
Gotcha.
eventually.
Cool, cool.
Also, Alien, Aliens, Prometheus, all those. I love that franchise. Um, I love RoboCop. I don't know if
Robo.
that's technically sci-fi. I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that
I love
counts.
RoboCop. I wrote
I
a
haven't watched
paper in
RoboCop in
college.
years.
I wrote a paper in college about the parallels between RoboCop and Jesus Christ, and it is deep.
Oh
So
wow.
watch RoboCop again with the idea that he is Jesus Christ, the Messiah, and you can see it like throughout the movie. It's awesome.
That's I'm definitely gonna have to go back, and I haven't seen RoboCop so in so long, so that's awesome.
I saw it definitely way too young because the hyper violence in that, like, I had to like take a drink of water midway through. It was like,
Oh.
wow, this is bloody.
I grew up like my earliest days. I was born in 84. So dating myself a bit, like growing up in like the 80s and early 90s, and you
Right.
know, like my parents I think tried to shield me from stuff, but like there were
My
times
parents
where I
tried, but
I would
they
see
gave in.
stuff, yeah, I'd see stuff on like USA or TNT, and like, yeah,
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't really super censored back then.
I saw Fire in the Sky on TV, and
Oh god.
I didn't know what the movie was until I was probably 21, 22 when I finally like sat down and watched it intentionally, and it all came flooding back to me as soon as I saw that like skin blanket that they cover him in. I was like,
Oh.
"Oh my god, this is the one. This is the one that I saw." And like I was interested, but I was also like, I should not be watching this.
Oh
But
man, that's rough.
yeah, with yeah, that the thing is also definitely the movie that seeing the poster for it that Drew Struzan did at the movie, the video rental store with my dad, that like pulled me in hard, and it made me think about like, wow, like art can do something, and if you get the right guy to make a poster for you or a video jacket for you, like that's how you get people interested. So
Yeah,
yeah, the
absolutely.
thing, that thing, I think that is one of the most beautiful posters or VCR jackets that I've ever seen.
That's awesome. Oh man, yeah. Gosh. That's funny. Yeah, I was just thinking about like artwork for movies and stuff, and there was this band in southern Vermont, uh which is a few hours away from where I am, and I played in bands in high school, and they were like one of my favorite like Vermont based bands, and they
Mhm.
had this T-shirt where they bogarted the the design for Army of Darkness, or like Evil
Great.
Dead 3 with
You're right.
like Ash on top of like
Right.
the
Doing the whole
pile with
Star Wars
like
pose.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was the one, and I loved that shirt. I wore that for years, and then I think it just like got too worn
That
out
probably
and
fell
I
off your
had to
body.
toss it. Yep. Oh man. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so I was looking through your stuff and I saw that you are working on writing and illustrating a cryptid themed children's book. Can you talk about the process for that and also like when it might be available? Because I know that people love your posters, and I'm pretty sure that like tons of people would love to buy a cryptid kids book.
Yeah. So technically, the posters, I started drawing the posters as a way of raising money to fund putting out a book. And then the posters kind of became my life. So the book has kind of been on the back burner.
Okay.
I've got, I want to say, three out of what I'm hoping is only 18 pages done. So I'm really aiming that after, I think after CryptidCon, especially in the winter, I'll be able to like really hone in and start back up on it. It's written completely. It's just having time to draw uh, everything myself, which I understand why people pass that on to somebody else now, because it is a feat. Even for a children's book, it is just a lot.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm really hoping, if not late 2022, I can start a crowdfunding campaign. And anybody that wants it, they can reserve their spot and get a hard copy. I'm
Nice.
also I've been also talking with a few of my friends that I went to school with that do animation about maybe making a tiny little web series with the characters and everything. So it might be a little YouTube cartoon that I put out, like a really finite, 5, 6 episodes, and that's it. Um, and then it's really ambitious at this point, but I have, friends that also do soundtracks and, write music for a living. And so
Yeah.
I've been talking about maybe trying to make the book um, a vinyl jacket and do like a 7 inch or a 10 inch where there's music that accompanies the storytelling, or having somebody, do an audiobook on a 10-inch record or something like that. So
Oh, that would be
I've got
really
a bunch of
rad.
ideas. Yeah. So it's just about, money and time and perseverance to actually like finish the damn thing. But
All right.
uh, so it's still in the
Yeah.
works. It's just a very slow process right now.
Yeah. Understood. Understood. I mean, there's something to be said about DIY and just like getting things done yourself.
Yeah.
But
I'm
there comes
definitely
a
trying to keep it as close to home as possible.
yeah, yeah. But it's like there certainly comes a point where you might need to ask for help or kind of
Yeah,
hire someone else to do a couple things here and there. But
definitely.
yeah, cool. Well, thanks for the insights on that.
Yeah, totally.
The animation thing sounds really cool.
It would be
Um,
really cool.
yeah, yeah. Oh man.
So there's just so many things that I want to do, and there's only so many hours in a day. So yeah, I'm definitely reaching out to other people. I teased last week. I'm actually working with one of my buddies that works at a 3D printing shop, um, doing some figurines, 3D
Really?
printed figurines to go with my posters.
Oh, that's really
So
rad, man.
I know. I'm pretty much doing everything but finishing my book at this point. So it's
Well,
still happening, but I'm like, there's just so many avenues and alleyways that I want to go down. And,
yeah, I
I'm
hear
only
you.
geting older. So if I don't act on it, I'm going to lose
Hey,
motivation.
yeah, well, you still got time, man. You're only 26.
I like to think so.
Yeah. So off the topic of like high strangeness, or maybe not,
I'm
I
sure we'll
wanted,
circle back.
yeah, I wanted to talk about music for a minute because we're both musicians, and So like you're a drummer who's been involved with a bunch of bands, probably in the
Mhm.
span of your music career, I assume.
Oh yeah.
um, are you currently like playing with a band, and like how long have you been playing drums?
I started playing drums when I was 12, going to middle school. My mom actually played bass drum throughout high school and marching band, so she already had like a entry level snare drum. So I needed
Right
the
on.
credit, and so she kind of pushed me into that, and I was like, wow, I love this. So I stuck with it. Even after graduating, I've gone through, I can't even count how many drum kits because I'm a gearhead and I love the latest and greatest. Um, so I've been playing for about 14 years. I play in three bands currently because it is the joke and stereotype is true that if you are a drummer, you will be recruited in multiple bands at the same time.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
sometimes at knife point. So
Whoa.
yeah, right. So my main band is called Tuesday Atlas, and it's more of an alternative hard rock. It's very like brand new, Modest Mouse, Manchester Orchestra, those kinds of bands. So
Sure, sure.
really, really bread and butter like hard rock, but here and there we get a little more melodic and soft and stuff like that. And then I've got a band called Dormant, which is, well, it used to be instrumental. Then we got a saxophonist slash vocalist. So it's like a math rock, um,
Cool.
post post rock type thing. So it's very weird time signatures, very Rush worship type stuff.
Okay.
Uh, um, and then I'm also in a hardcore band called Code of Violence, which is just straight lughead, don't even have to think about it, just hard brutish riffs and blast beats and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
uh yeah, it's pretty, I'm pretty fluid with the styles that I like to play and stuff I like to listen to, so that kind of runs the gambit of my ability.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. I remember you shared a couple of your links with me a little while back, and I checked them out, and you've got some serious chops with drumming. So that's awesome. How's the
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, how's the how's the music scene in Indiana? Do you like do any touring around the state or like the region, or obviously with
uh
COVID, like no one's done anything in the past
right.
year, but
uh I'm I'm a pretty tall guy. I'm 6'4", and I could not stand sleeping on a floor or in a van. So I don't tour. And that's like one of my stipulations. I'm not going to tour. So I will do weekenders and I'll do like the weekend warrior stuff. But
yeah,
that's about it. And especially, having kids, I don't want to be away from home at all. So
right.
touring, not so much, but 2019, I probably played one or two gigs a week, it seemed like. So we were pretty busy for a while. And then COVID hit and I was able to slow down and then, you know, focus on other things like making monsters and you know uh, integrating into this like culture and scene online that I had no clue that there was such a big following for this kind of stuff until I started looking for it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and
it's
I my like immediate circle of friends, I'm definitely like the most interested in this stuff, and they'll like humor me and they'll like you know feign interest when I'm like telling stories and anecdotes about weird stuff. And like I'm always pushing Jim Harold's Campfire and Astonishing Legends and Strangeology and getting people to like listen to podcasts
uh
that I like.
yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
the most they're enthusiastic about this kind of stuff here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, sometimes it can be a hard sell for sure, but the the online like community, like I started Strangeology last year in April, and I had no idea like
Yeah.
what was out there, and just like the caliber of people like in this online scene, if you will, is like so supportive, and like there's so many great people out there, and it's really just awesome to be
Yeah.
a part of. Everyone's like super welcoming, and yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
think that's something that also attracts me. It's just such an inclusive and like interesting and like wholehearted community. That I mean, when it comes down to it, like cryptozoology is like pretty wholesome. So obviously, anybody that's
Sure.
interested into it,
Yeah, it's
anybody that's interested in it is going to be equally wholesome. And like you have to be pretty open minded to like
oh yeah.
think that there's a, a goat dragon man living in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. To
Yeah,
so
right,
if
exactly.
you can like if you can entertain that, you're probably a pretty good-hearted person to give
Right.
that the time of day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think cryptozoology is probably pretty hard to gatekeep.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure people try, but
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure there's
there's
some
no
people,
room for
but
it.
I haven't run into any yet. So,
Yeah,
um,
thankfully.
yeah. So as far as like music and like the weird are concerned, have you ever been in a band that's been more geared towards having a theme, like not quite like the level of Guar, but like for
Right.
example, one of my old bands had a song that was loosely about Mothman, and it was called Point Pleasant, and this was like circa '07, '08 that I wrote the song.
Okay,
So
so
it's like
as like
Mothman like wasn't really like huge on like the online
right, the
scene
book
back
or
then,
the movie
but
came out, and then yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
no, not really. I'm very into like chaotic hardcore, and like I was in a pretty big pop punk phase, and then
Nice.
I've moved on to like more mellow like post hardcore stuff.
Yep.
So it I'm I haven't really gotten into any of that like themed stuff, but Tuesday Atlas, my main band, we are working on our first full length, which is called Stone Tape,
Oh, there you go.
because it's a concept record. So, and the story that the singer came up with was very reminiscent of Stone Tape Theory, which I'm obsessed with, and we're going to get into for Patreon, correct?
Yeah, yeah. The Patreon segment, we'll be talking about that. Yeah, that's great. Oh, I guess there is a little bit of
Yeah.
a
So,
a weird
yeah,
aesthetic there, right?
right.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the closest I've been to being in a band that focuses on the strange and weird. Um, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Just
No, that's
naming,
awesome.
yeah,
That's it's funny, like you saying like going from pop punk to hardcore to whatever. It's like
yeah.
there's kind of
It's
like
the
that.
natural progression.
Yeah, that exactly. Yeah, there's that whole like stereotype of like you start off in like a ska band and then pop punk,
Yep.
hardcore, and then like you go into like indie folk rock
Yeah, pretty
at
much.
the end. Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't gauge my ears or anything, so I'm
Oh,
undercover. I don't have any
there
of
you go.
the battle scars of my youth. So
This the MySpace scene days of the early 2000s.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm pretty much I'm that meme of the guy at the party that's like they don't know that I listen to pop punk religiously. What a
Right, right.
weenie.
The guy sitting in the corner. Yeah. Oh boy. So for
They don't know that I cried in my car to American football on the way here.
oh no. Big mood with the Kinsellas.
Yeah, right.
So back to cryptids, and just like for funsies, what would you say are your favorite Midwestern cryptids, and which ones would make your dream team Midwestern emo band?
Oh, geez. I'm gonna go Loveland Frogman on bass because he looks like he probably knows how to slap the bass.
Sure.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put the. This is a hard one. I'm gonna put the Michigan Dog Man on vocals
Oh.
because he can. I'm sure he can howl into the night.
Yep. Yep.
So drums. I don't think Oklahoma is technically Midwest, but I'm gonna put the Oklahoma Octopus on drums, just obviously. And we're gonna do a four piece, so I need a guitarist. I'm going with Beast of Busco here in Indiana.
Right
Sure,
on.
Busco, Indiana.
That's awesome.
I don't know what
Yeah,
they'd be called.
right. Oh gosh. Have you ever watched the YouTube channel Scott, was it Scottoon Network?
Yes. Okay. I haven't seen it on YouTube, but I've seen it like,
Yeah.
going viral and being shared around. So yeah.
Yeah, so the guy that does that, he did a cover of The Impression That I Get by the Boss Tones, right?
Mhm.
And there's this like one, and he does all these different genres. He starts off with
Mhm.
like, he's got like skate punk and like hardcore power violence and all this like all these different genres, and then like halfway through he busts out a version of the song that's like midwestern emo, and I was just like, when the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my god, that's so good. Like, why is it so good?
He needs to
It's like,
expand
dude,
it.
yeah, I know. I commented on the video and it's like, you need to do an entire version of the song in this style.
Yep.
Oh
Can't
yeah,
go wrong.
no, you can't. um so Easton, back to the weird here. Have you ever had an experience with the paranormal, or like an encounter with a creature or a potential cryptid that you couldn't explain? And if so, like, do you mind sharing any stories?
Yeah. So I want it too much, and the universe knows that. So
Mm.
they don't give me what I want. And I've had one honest, honestly supernatural experience while I was living in Cincinnati, which I can go into. And then a couple years ago, I had a weird thing happen, but I'm going to guarantee it was just because it was late at night, and it was one of those like ghost cars or phantom car things where I pulled up to a stoplight and there was a truck just barreling, just hauling ass behind me, and I thought it was going to hit me, and I like kind of flinched, and I looked in my rear view and there was nothing there.
Oh
So I
wow.
don't know if they just like turned really hard because it's Indiana and he was in a truck and he doesn't have to abide by street rules, or what. But when I was living in Cincinnati, I would go biking across the river into Kentucky on the weekends, and I was in Covington, Kentucky, and it's very hilly and very steep roads. Excuse me. And I was coming up to a stoplight, and I noticed, like, to my right on the street, there was a guy that I'm going to assume was homeless. I don't want to be like insensitive, but I'm assuming he was homeless, and he looked like he was like beat within an inch of his life. Like his face was pretty purple and swollen, and his eyes were probably like open like 20 to 30%. And he had like caked blood under his beard on his neck that I could see. And I was like, looking at him because I was like, is this guy okay? And he was just kind of like, doing his thing, just hanging out on the street. And we like locked eyes and we like did the white guy like smile at each other.
Uh-huh.
And and the light turned, and so I'm like starting down an incline, and I'm again hauling ass, and I probably get 8 or 7 blocks in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. It was really quick. And I
Yeah.
come to the next red light, and who's there? It's the guy that I saw like, 8 blocks back. And I like cocked my head because I recognized him, and he like noticed me notice him, and he just kind of like did that whole thing, just like smiled and like did a really slow nod. And my fight or flight like kicked in really hard, and I hightailed it back to Cincinnati and went in my dorm and just like locked the door and stayed in all night. So
Wow.
and I think I like forgot about that whole thing for a few weeks after that, because one day it just like hit me while I was in Covington again. It's like something weird happened here, and I had like haven't really revisited it. So that's
Yeah.
pretty much the only like weird, unexplained head scratcher thing that I've experienced.
Yeah. Wow, that's kind of intense, Easton. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
out of all the like the cliche things you could have, like I've seen UFOs, stuff that I just couldn't explain in the sky.
Yeah.
I've been to haunted locations and never saw anything or felt anything. But yeah, this one weird instance that has really stuck with me ever since I started digging into this like side of Reese and Fortiana.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that story. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty like head scratcher experience.
Right.
Like
It's a weird one.
how does this like person, if it was a person, like
Right. And
transport themselves like that far? And
yeah, and definitely on foot. Like there's no bus that passed me. He didn't have a bike. There's no way that he could get from point A to point B in the same amount of time that I did, because he was like
right,
reclining. He was like sitting on the sidewalk with his legs stretched out, like on his elbow. So
just kind of chilling.
yeah, it just didn't. And then it would be one thing if I just saw him in another place and he didn't acknowledge me and I just saw him, but the way that I like, was like looking at him pretty confused and he just like looked at me and acknowledged me. So I didn't like that at all.
Yeah. No, that's not
So,
good.
and I always say that I
yeah.
want to experience something weird, but then I do like a callback to that and I'm like, that didn't feel right. And it felt very surreal.
Yeah. You gotta be careful what you wish for, I guess.
Definitely. So yeah. It was a little too much for me.
Yep. There's I feel like I've said it on like the last couple interviews I've done, but it's like the whole mantra of like you look into the phenomenon enough and it starts looking back,
and it points back at you. And
yeah.
It'll definitely single you out.
Yeah, it's very bizarre for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we've chatted briefly about this before, but can you talk about the haunted planet or haunted psyche concept for a brief moment, and like the phenomenon of alien abduction?
Yeah, so
I know that's something you're passionate about. So
yeah, so it's been a while. I should probably read it again. So John Keel's Our Haunted Planet. It's pretty much his theory that. Are you familiar with Graham Hancock at all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Fingerprints of the Gods, Magicians of the Gods. Yeah,
very familiar.
Yeah, it's pretty much a somehow weirder theory. So Graham Hancock's whole thing is that the human race has a missing era, where we were like, what would be pretty much superhuman, and we had, telekinesis and like just strange powers that we've either like outgrown, like vestigial organs, and we just can't tap into that anymore. But John Keel's theory is that we pretty much have a missing either link or era in the human timeline that would explain and answer all of the extraterrestrial experiences and what he coined ultra terrestrial experiences, where they're here and they're among us. They're either in a different dimension or they just live in our psyche and they live in our consciousness.
Yeah.
So, and then along with the alien abduction thing, it's pretty anecdotal, but he goes into instances where people have very vivid and ugly recollections of being abducted, but they're like, when they come to and they're like, oh my God, I was taken by these things and I don't know what happened to me. But they're sitting next to somebody that has been with them, for the past 4 hours or so, and they were just like sleeping in the car or something. So it's like this whole idea that, maybe our consciousness and our soul are kind of in an ether, and we're just, plucked out of our body technically. And it's more of like like an avatar type thing. We're just occupying vehicles, and the real. So, and he also kind of goes into like a religion bashing type thing, and he's like the wacky hippie in the 70s and everything. So, like I said, I need to really dive back into that one now that I'm, a much more mature man and can digest more of that. I remember trying to read Fingerprints of the Gods probably when I was like 20, 21, and it is it's hard to like get through. You have to read the same paragraph 3 or 4 times to like really
Yeah.
digest the information.
Yeah, Graham Hancock's books are very very big. I have
Yeah.
one of his books, America Before, sitting on my
Hmm.
bookshelf that I've been waiting to open up for a few months.
As much as I love the research and the work he does, he is just wildly eccentric, and I equally love and hate it. So he's a guy that I love to hate.
He definitely has some pretty interesting theories for sure.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
some of his theories have came to like they're indisputable. So he's definitely ahead of the curve, and for being a laughing
Oh,
stock in the architect or the archaeological world, I think he
yeah.
really holds his own, and I appreciate and respect like his work definitely.
Oh, for sure, for sure. It's interesting to see over time. I was first probably exposed to Hancock in like the mid mid to late 90s, and
Mhm.
he started appearing on different like shows on like Discovery Channel and TLC
Right.
talking about like how old is the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid really, and like him and
Mhm.
like Robert Schoch. I have actually had the opportunity to sit in on a lecture with Robert Schoch a
Oh,
few
really?
years ago at Contact in the Desert. It was a pretty
That's
like
awesome.
surreal experience. But
Yeah.
and then I think the following year Graham Hancock was there, and I was like, ah man, I wanted to go that year too, but like just had a kid, so couldn't
Right.
really.
Yeah. Well, at this
But
point in his life, all he does is preach about the wonders of ayahuasca in between
yes,
everything else.
yes,
So
for sure, for
all you
sure.
have to do
There,
is listen to his Joe Rogan episodes, and I'm
yeah,
sure you could get
yeah,
caught up on everything.
yeah, DMT and ayahuasca, but but yeah, no, it's interesting to just kind of see how he's been like vindicated with newer
Yeah,
archaeological discoveries. Like you've got like Gobekli Tepe and
definitely.
like different like things in the archaeological, geological, fossil record and stuff of like his whole thing with like the Younger Dryas being this like
Hmm.
huge, there's a huge cataclysm that wiped out all the megafauna in North America
Right.
and like kind of like reset humanity, and like
Hmm.
there was probably massive flooding going on, which might be why there's so many different cultures in the world that have all these flood myths.
Which, I mean, it all makes
It's
sense. Like
yeah.
they acted like it was so outlandish, but I mean, it's just common. Like
Right, right.
in the blink of an eye that human existence has been here, I'm sure that the world has gone through many transformations, and we've had to build and rebuild over and over and over again. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It is definitely it's definitely outlandish in the way he delivers it. But I think the intention behind all of his work, I think, is pretty sound.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, that's gonna. It's such a cool topic. You can really like dive in deep to the rabbit
Ooh,
hole on that
yeah,
one.
and your brain will throb afterwards.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So like we've got this report from the Pentagon that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
Do you think there's aliens out there? And or and I keep thinking about this more and more as like the whole ultra terrestrial hypothesis, like
Mhm.
because people are like, oh, it might not necessarily be aliens, and every time I see that, I'm like, well, maybe it's there's another species under the ocean or in another dimension.
See,
Like, what do
so
you think?
I'm much more interested in the exploration of and the idea of there something already being here. So I know I've briefly talked to you about Lake Baikal in Russia, and
Yes.
there's a whole mess of strange lore and legend that goes with underwater civilization or underwater species that we don't we haven't outright experienced or met or discovered. Um, I want to say that there is alien life out there. However, I am in the camp of most likely whatever we would be meeting is post biological. And
Hmm.
if their timeline and existence is anything like ours, eventually, I feel like naturally it would be pretty similar to ours, depending on you know what planet they're from and what resources are given to them.
Right.
But space travel would just be such a violent, you know, you have to be pretty durable to get from one end of the galaxy to another, unless they're like, it's just, I don't know, it's pretty hard. I definitely want to believe that there is life outside of our galaxy, and it would be extremely narcissistic to think that there isn't. Um, but I'm definitely in the camp that more than likely it's a super intelligence or a super AI type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it very well could be for sure. Um,
But and also, I mean, we've only been sending radio waves out for the last like what 80 years, 60
yeah.
years, something like that. So I mean, in the small amount of time that we've actually been pumping information out into the cosmos, we've only been here for a fraction of a second in the grand scheme of things. So I'm
Yes,
not
that's
surprised at
very
all that
true.
we haven't met or seen anything. So
Right. Yeah.
I love the Fermi paradox, and just the idea of where is everybody and why aren't we why aren't we getting anything back,
Right. Yeah.
besides the like the rogue signals and stuff. So like I said, it's very narcissistic to think that we're the only intelligent life in this grand scheme, and like it it boggles my mind to think of how huge the universe is.
Oh yeah, it's
So yeah,
incomprehensible. And then
no,
there's
you
like the
really can't.
whole multiverse theory that's starting to
Yeah,
become more and more
which just makes it
accepted
more of a
or
yeah.
yeah.
So it's just a nasty, soupy tesseract of possibility.
I love that. I love that description. A nasty,
Yes,
soupy tesseract.
soupy tesseract.
Well, like speaking of radio communications, like what's your take on SETI? Like if an alien intelligence, like post biological or not, is advanced enough to communicate through like the cosmos, like surely they could have found another way to communicate beyond radio waves, right? Like I think of
Definitely.
like Star Trek, they have like subspace. And obviously that's a
Mhm.
made up concept, but there are like different dimensions beyond uh the four dimensions that we live in. Well, three dimensions of
Really.
physical space plus time,
Right.
but there's
Mhm.
dimensions on top of that in theoretical physics. So it's like
Right.
I don't know, like do you think SETI is really kind of looking in the wrong place cuz they're just looking at radio waves.
Yeah. So I'm back and forth into thinking that they're doing something like productive, but also maybe wasting a ton of money at the same
Yeah.
time. I love Seth Shostak's writing, and the idea that he's definitely the one that pushed me into, yeah, more than likely if we were going to experience some sort of alien life, they're going to be post biological,
Hmm.
because naturally, I mean, we're already, we're only 50, 60 years into like this technological boom, and we're already like slowly migrating into the singularity. I mean, I remember Google Glass being such a huge like thing,
Oh,
and
I forgot
I
about Google Glass.
yeah, well,
Wow.
everybody did. So I thought for sure that was going to be like step one to soon having a hard drive implanted in your brain.
Well,
So
yeah. Well, Elon Musk wants to do that, right?
yeah, so which is cool. I mean, I'd upgrade my brain if I could, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
I've had those conversations before. Like, oh, if like you could live forever and upload your consciousness into some kind of hard drive somewhere,
yeah,
like,
definitely, I'd live
why
forever
not?
just once. Why not?
Yeah, just
So,
yeah. Who knows? Maybe
so
we're already in that simulation right now. Oh
yeah.
man.
So I think that radio waves are definitely the most viable thing that we have right now, just in what we're capable of and what will probably be universal to other life or other civilizations. So
Yeah.
I think this is a good start to it, but obviously, like I said, we've only been here for a second in the grand scheme of things.
Oh
So
yeah.
I mean, for all we know, life has already came and went in another quadrant of the galaxy or the universe. So um, there's that whole Tesla quote that when we start researching unexplained things, we'll make more progress in 1 year than we did in a decade of researching what's right in front of us. So I definitely think it's probably one of those things where it doesn't hurt. Like I said, it's kind of just a waste of money at this point, but it doesn't hurt to to push out and to send hey, we're here. But
Right.
I don't think that we've really weighed out the consequences. I mean, with all the horror sci-fi that I consume,
Right. Yeah. Steven
if they
wasn't.
have if they have the ability to get here, more than likely they have the ability to plunder and take all of our resources and then enslave us.
Right. Yeah.
So
It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't like Stephen Hawking quoted as say like warning people about like, oh, we don't really want to let other
yeah,
civilizations
we
out
don't
there
know that
know
we're
we're
here.
here.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess
Yeah.
I guess I also, I don't know. I'm It sounds bad. I'm also in the camp of, I don't think that with Elon Musk's work, I don't think that we should colonize other planets because we've already like proven what we're capable of and what we'll do time and time again in the name of fake money. So
Right.
I'm in the, it sounds pretty nihilist, but I'm in the camp that we don't deserve a mulligan. Like we had this one shot to keep us going, and we decided
Yeah.
to give us jobs and make us pay bills. So
Right. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah. That's yeah.
a
That's
line must be
definitely
crossed.
something to consider for sure. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour here. Actually, maybe a little bit beyond, but my I've got a couple audience questions, but my last question for you
Yeah,
is out of all the high strangeness out there in the world, what keeps you up at night the most?
there's two things that I'm pretty open about. One isn't really high strangeness because it's a thing, but it is highly strange, and that's black holes. The
Hmm.
concept of supermassive black holes is the most terrifying thing that I can think of just nothingness, and I hate that.
Oh.
High strangeness Fortiana, I think time slips really freak me out and keep me up at night. Um, and again, it's all anecdotal stuff, and it's all word of mouth, obviously.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, it's just really uncomfortable. Just to think of, I don't know. I like my agency, and I like I always have a watch on. I like just knowing my time and my space and my place and time and all that.
Sure.
So the idea of um, unwittingly and unwillingly being plunged into another space and time that you didn't intend to be is really terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. That's very unsettling to
That
be an understatement.
yeah, definitely. So that, along with I've already mentioned David Weatherly. I love David Weatherly. I love his work.
Yeah.
His Strange Intruders book um, got me. I was like, grinning men stories are terrifying just for what they are physically. But after that, and then reading Black Eyed Children, like things that come to you, I don't like that at all. Kind of like the dude in Cincinnati, or the dude in Kentucky that I ran into.
Yeah.
Like I did not go searching for that. It just came to me, and I didn't like that at all. Like going to a haunted house,
Yeah.
you can go there and you can leave. Sometimes
Right.
it follows you, or nothing happens at all. But when like you said, when the phenomena looks at you, and says you and comes for you. I don't like that at all.
You're like, no thanks, you're being pretty rude right now.
Yep.
Get out of my safety space.
I don't like this at all. You're being kind of disrespectful. So yeah,
and that's really all you can do in those situations.
Yeah, definitely.
Just say no.
Yeah. Black holes. It's just the worst thing I can think of, and it's such a weird neurotic thing to like be hung up on, but legitimately the concept of a black hole just, it makes me like weak in the knees sometimes if you like really think about it.
Yeah, it is. It's a scary concept. I remember being freaked out by black holes when I was a kid, and I think it was still like all the books that were out were still like, oh, like they're still kind of theoretical, but
right.
And then like now we have a picture of
now one. We have a picture. Now it's like we can detect them. We can prove that. Yeah.
Most galaxies have like a supermassive black hole
at the center. Like, we're tethered to them everywhere. Yep. So, I remember watching Interstellar the first time, and like
I was going to ask about
seeing
that.
seeing the like scientifically accurate portrayal of a black hole, and that whole thing, like it almost gave me like a sense of like seasickness or like vertigo. Oof. Just like watching, or like when they're going through the wormhole.
Yeah,
it's just too much.
That's intense. Well, thanks for your perspective on that, Easton.
I'm out of my mind.
We're all out of our minds. So I've got a couple audience questions here, if you don't mind entertaining these. The first one I have here is from Mr. Sam Sheeran, and Sam asks,
Mr. Sam
Sheeran. He asks, which would you prefer, an alien abduction or a Bigfoot abduction?
Alien abduction is much more common, technically. So, which leads me to believe that people that are abducted by Bigfoot don't come back usually, unless you're Albert Olsman. So I'm going to go with alien abduction.
All right. That was probably like one of my biggest fears as a kid.
Yep. For my self-preservation's sake, I'm going to say alien abduction.
Yeah. They usually return you. You might have a couple weird marks on your body.
That's
maybe
fine.
a chunk of metal implanted in your skin.
I might wake up screaming and trying to find my wife in the night, but at least I came back.
Jeez. All right. Our next question here is from Ice Age Man Powboy 78, and he asks, if you could befriend a cryptid, which one would it be?
Honestly, he's in the big three, but I'm gonna say Mothman just because of the stories of people getting a sense of like sadness or like, this thing is lost. I would want to befriend Mothman to get him back to where he wants to go. We could have a whole ET story arc.
Right on. Got to help out our resident flying sad boys.
Yep, pretty much. So I'd have to wear some sort of welder's mask or whatever, because I don't want my eyes to swell up. But I'd probably try to get him home.
Yeah. All right, that's awesome. So our last question from the audience is from Jonathan Dodd, and Jonathan asks, what is your favorite cryptid encounter story?
Ooh. I want to say my favorite would be, was it the Cornwall Owlman? It's like a Mothman offshoot.
In England.
I think he lives in a monastery or a church and a cemetery. I think.
Yeah.
It's not like a specific thing, but I just love the idea of like a Scooby-Doo-esque type thing where he's just keeping people away from the building and the cemetery. Awesome. And I can just hear the Scooby-Doo music as he's just like, doing a slow glide over over people trying to get them out of there. I
Yes.
love those. And then um, I would say a close second would be I Flatwoods Monster. I love how 1988 The Blob that story is. It's just
Mm.
very wholesome, like overall children going to check out a downed meteor or spaceship, whatever.
Yep.
And then I also love the Flatwood story because it just never came back. There's no like reoccurring like sightings or anything. Like Brexy was
Right.
here and gone, and there's nothing else. I love one-off stuff like that.
The classic one-hit wonder
Yep,
cryptids.
like that's all you need. You go out on a high note.
Yeah.
Don't
George
tarnish your name.
George Costanza.
Yep.
Never better advice for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So you mentioned some of the conventions this summer and fall. So you're going to be can you tell the audience again which one of those you'll be at and where they can find you?
Yeah. So first one up will be in August with the Moth Boys Cryptid Bash. I'll be there. I'm still waiting to get confirmation about Mothman Festival, but either way, I'll be there hanging out with Moth Boys. I'm doing like a little exclusive poster for them. So
Cool.
I'll definitely be there to see that send off. And then right now, all I have after that is Cryptid Con in Kentucky. So I'm trying to keep
Nice.
it pretty spaced out because, again, I don't want to be
Yeah.
away from home too much.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll be meeting in person because I'll be
Yeah.
be at
Can't wait.
most or all of those. I haven't quite decided if I want to apply to be a vendor at Mothman Festival or if I just want to go just to experience it and be present.
I think you should definitely experience it first
Yeah.
because
That's like the
up
big
until
one.
last year, when it was canceled, I had been going for the last like 5 years.
Mhm.
And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it's just a fun, Point Pleasant is just a very fun place to be. And they definitely are, like writing really hard on the Mothman thing. But other than that, I just think it's a really cool town. If you
Yeah.
like, history and like colonial history and settling and as bastardous as America is, just like the story of what we are and how we got where we are is just very present in that town, and it's really
Hmm.
cool.
Nice. Cool. Well, that's all some pretty exciting stuff coming up for later this year. So I
Definitely.
can't wait for those festivals.
Yep.
All right. Well, this has been a super fun conversation, Easton.
Absolutely.
Thank you again so much for coming on the show and getting weird with me and talking
Yeah.
about all sorts of high strangeness.
Thanks for having me on. It's
Yeah,
one of my favorite things to
absolutely.
do, and I rarely ever get to do it.
Yeah. So Easton is going to hang out with me for a little bit longer on the Strangeology Beyond segment of the show for my Patreon members to talk about some more weirdness, like the stone tape theory, which is pretty awesome. So definitely members stick around for that. And before we sign off here for the regular show, can you tell my listeners where they can connect with you and follow you online, and where they can purchase your artwork? Because
Yeah.
definitely
So
people need to buy his stuff because it's awesome.
please. I'm most active on Instagram, so I'm at Easton Hawk Illustration. Um, I have a Facebook page that I don't post on as much as I should, but that's also Easton Hawk Illustration. And then my Etsy store is Easton Hawk Art. So it's all pretty much in the same wheelhouse. I'm not on Twitter because it's overwhelming. So I might branch out to that. I might branch out to TikTok at some point. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
There's only so much time in the day that I have to mess around. So
Yep, I hear you there for sure.
Yeah.
I think I spread myself a little too thin at times, so it's hard to keep up with if you go all in.
So, and being a creative, it's almost completely necessary that you're all over the place like that. So,
yep.
I'm sure it's inevitable, and I will branch out to the other places. But for right now, Instagram is the most comfortable. So that's where I'm sitting.
That's the home base for sure. Well, great. Thank you again, Easton, for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And we will see you patrons after the short break. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks again to Easton for coming on the show. Again, make sure to follow him over on Instagram and check out his Etsy shop as well. And if you're going to any of the fests or conferences he's going to be at later this year, definitely stop by his table and say hi. All right, time for some shout-outs. As always, big shout-out to all my patrons who help make this show possible. We've got Alex Dorgan, Alyssa, Robin from the Mystic Novelty Company, Christine McTire, Chad from the Appalachian Huntsman, Michael Waddell from MetaZoo Games, Greg Morrill from All the Weird and the Order 66 podcast, Roberto Martinez, Sean Colon, Miranda Jarnot, John Hickenbottom, Sarah Sherg, Maureen Asmat, Daniel Preparedwolf, and Kathy Howard. If you'd like to become a patron to support the Strangeology podcast, head on over to patreon.com/Strangeology for more information. There's all sorts of tiers with really cool rewards, like early access to content, bonus extensions at the end of each episode, which is my Strangeology Beyond segment, exclusive merch, discounts, and a lot more. And as always, for regular listeners, thank you so much for listening, sharing, and liking the show. The downloads for the show are quickly approaching 4,000, which is awesome. So definitely tell your friends, and I super, super very much appreciate it. You're all so awesome, and I can't thank you enough for listening to my show and being into what I do. It means the world to me. And if you'd like to get in touch with me with stories or feedback, you have nice things to say, my DMs are always open on Instagram, or you can shoot me an email at strangeologist@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow me on all my social media platforms. I'm mainly on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook, where I now have a private Facebook podcast listeners group. So definitely join that. I'm also on Twitter, and you can find me less so on TikTok. So yeah, definitely check that out and keep up to date with everything I'm doing. And if you have any personal stories of encounters, again, you can call the Strangeology hotline. The number is 802-448-0612. Again, that's 802-448-0612. So if you have stories of a cryptid encounter, paranormal encounter, my plan is to compile a collection of cool, weird, interesting stories for an upcoming episode. So call in if you've got something you want to share. Just a heads up, there's a 3-minute time limit on the voicemail. So if your story does take a little bit longer, give a call back and leave another message just picking up where you left off. And that's it for the regular episode today. Thank you again so much for tuning in. And for patrons, stick around after the break for Strangeology Beyond. Easton and I are going to get into some more Fortean topics like stone tape theory and a lot of other high strangeness. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep it strange. Welcome back, patrons, to the exclusive Strangeology Beyond segment of the show where we like to get weird. Easton, thanks again for coming onto the show and letting the audience know a little bit about you and what you're into. One thing we were talking about before